and we became the Boys Next Door, and we were kind of like a punk band. Then we left and came to England, and on the plane we changed ourselves to the Birthday Party. We left because we'd exhausted all possibilities in Melbourne. At that time, the music industry, the music scene was, well, the music industry was so regressive. There was just no hope for anybody. There was a lot of extraordinary music being made in Melbourne at the time, a lot of incredible bands. And I think a lot of the great music came from the fact that everybody knew at their very core that they would never, ever be successful in Australia, unless they left Australia. Well, initially London was a huge disappointment. We were led to believe growing up in Melbourne that London was the place to go. You know, we would read The Enemy and all of that sort of stuff, and we would look at all these bands you can go and see, and The Enemy would be trumpeting on about how brilliant everyone was and all of that sort of stuff, and what a kind of vibrant city that London was. But by the time we arrived there, it wasn't. It was dead, and the bands were shit. And I think any of the kind of energy from the punk movement had completely dissipated. From what I remember was that once the Birthday Party ended, I went back to Australia and kind of drifted around for a year or something like that. I was still writing a lot of stuff, but I had no will to form another band or become part of another band. And one day kind of just drifted into another, and then Mick once again kind of called me and said, why don't we start another band? And it's, I don't know, and we did. We went into the studio and recorded From Her to Eternity without any concept of what kind of music we wanted to do, what sound we were approaching. We'd not rehearsed. We didn't know how we sounded together as a band. And I think as a consequence for that, that record is really a startling kind of record. You know, I just had loads of lyrics, and we just kind of wrote these songs from the ground up. And it just worked in some sort of fucked up kind of way. I felt I'd been getting better as a songwriter. I think we just kind of, we would do a record and then decide what kind of record we wanted to make next. There were influences pouring in from everywhere. I think after From Her to Eternity, I got really into kind of blues music in a big way. You know, so that had a massive influence over the next record. The Firstborn is Dead. You know, and they just we were just, it just seemed that we were free to do whatever we wanted to do. I don't think I've ever been happy with records that I've made anyway. Yeah. It's only with huge hindsight that I can kind of think back and think, well, that was good and that was good, or that wasn't good, or whatever. But for me, it's always really been shedding something and getting on with the next thing. And it's still very much like that. I went into a lot of detox programs. You know, I could write the kind of Michelin guide of English, you know, rehabilitation centres. You know, so it wasn't just one particular thing that happened and then I walked out and everything was all right, you know. I'd been living in London, I went to Brazil. The change is enormous anyway. I mean, in São Paulo, it's just a completely different sort of place. Everything you see is different, everything you smell, the whole, you know, it couldn't be more different. And it was certainly a reason for wanting to go to Brazil, was to get away from Europe, get away from the architecture, get away from every aspect of it. You know, I just remember coming out of the airport at Rio. We went there on tour, and the kind of doors open. It was just like, you know, this is different in every conceivable way. And I just didn't go back. You know, I just stayed there, I think, for 3 years. I think it was a way into a different sort of music. Well, I mean, the Murder Ballads record was conceived to a degree as a joke. It caused, the fact that we were doing a Murder Ballads record seemed to be such a kind of obvious game plan, simply because I've been writing these songs for years anyway. But it was a great record to make, and it was kind of seen as a sort of an extracurricular kind of thing, something that was not to be taken as in the general line of our records. It was just some kind of thing, a little side project we were working on. And I think I think up until that time there'd become more and more weight on each record of you know, that we had to make these an important record, or you know, or whatever. It felt like that at the time. And the Murder Ballads one, because the idea itself was so dubious, we were freed up very much in the studio, and it was just hugely enjoyable to make. You know, and you hear that on that record. You know, it's in no way a bleak record. It's a very funny record, and you can just, you know, every track you can hear a band, you know, enjoying themselves. The only reason it was successful was because Kylie Minogue. I did a duet with Kylie Minogue, and that became you know, that was a hit, which was you know, we sat back in awe, really, the fact that there was this song that went up the charts. We're on, you know, top of the pops and all this sort of stuff. But at the same time, we understood that you know, it was a one-off thing. This wasn't going to be the way forward, and of course it wasn't. But there was a certain enjoyment in knowing that, you know, some kids were going to go out and buy this Murder Ballads record and find that the rest of it wasn't really anything like that single at all. Well, I mean, it's a convenient record because you know, I get into a cab and the cab driver sort of says, "Are you a rock star or something?" And I go, "Well, yeah." And he goes, "Oh, I never heard of you." And I go, "You heard of Kylie Minogue?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah." And I go, "I did a record with her." You know, and it gets me into clubs, gets me, you know. It's handy. It was the Boatman's Calls is a very beautiful record. I'm very pleased with that. I mean, basically I recorded a lot of that stuff while the Murder Ballads record was being made. I think it was being mixed, which was at that particular time the whole thing with mixing a record was, I found it unbelievably tedious and didn't really want to have much to do with. So I went into the adjoining studio and started to write and play these songs just at the piano, and I think Marty came in and played bass with me. And we just put down these songs as kind of ideas. But I listened to this back more and more, and it was just beautiful. You know, it was all there. And the rest of the band thought so as well. So I brought these songs along to actually, with the Bad Seeds, to record the next record, and we kept playing them, and you know, the band, not just myself, but the band said, "Look, it's already, it works as it is." And the Bad Seeds are a great group in that way, that they understand that their purpose within the group is to serve the songs themselves, and to stand back when necessary and play when necessary. So it was a very sparse record, piano-dominated record. You know, you write a song and I guess on some level when you're actually writing it, it feels like you're touching something that is meaningful to you. But once the songs are actually written, once the band are in there as well, they become something else, and so they should. They become, they need to work as songs, not just you know, just because something is personal doesn't mean it's any good. They need to work as songs. I guess that's the thing that I like most about that record. Not that it was raw and personal, but that the songs were well crafted, and they're good. They're good songs on any level, I think. I think what happened was I got an office, and I just started to go in every day, and force myself to write, because I just wasn't writing. You know, I'd sit at the piano and kind of look at it and get up after 10 minutes and you know, and I really, you know, and what I want to be is a songwriter and a singer, and that's what I want to do. And it just seemed foolish to squander that. And I think I got an office. I went, you know, and I spent a lot of hours there, and I still do to this day, on my own in this office. And you either write something or you just sort of sit there for, you know, 8 hours and do nothing. So you write. And that was quite difficult initially. Now it's, you know, now it's just what I do. It's like breathing. It's, I don't think about it. You know, I just get up and go. But it, you know, and songs came. You know, a lot of the people that really, you know, the poets and so forth that are my heroes. A lot of painters have a very disciplined approach to the way that they, you know, go about things. I mean, you know, I was initially a painter. I went to art school, and it was a painter, and I used to hang out with painters, and they always got up early and they painted. Didn't matter what condition they were in. That's just what they did, and they put in enormous amounts of hours painting. Musicians themselves are just a notoriously lazy bunch of bastards. And novelists and so forth, they, you know, you just have to put in the hours or you don't get anything done. I'm going tomorrow to Paris with this little band that which is basically 3 other members of the Bad Seeds, and we're going to go and try and write some stuff together, write some music together, which I'm really excited about. I mean, I haven't worked in that way for years, actually, from going in with just words and trying to work out some music as a band. You know, for the last 3 records, I've been coming in with the songs pretty much written. Well, I want to keep doing this. You know, it just makes me happy to do this. You know, because what else do you do? You know, what else would I do? I don't know.